welcome to another weekly analysis behind the news. Ever get the feeling that there are gatekeepers out there who only want you to access what they give you? Back before the days of the internet, gatekeepers resided in the halls of mainstream media, libraries, and publishing houses. Yet there were always ways around them that niche publishers and organizations, like the John Birch Society, managed to find. But you would think that the internet would allow for a free and open airing of all viewpoints, right? Well, what happens when you publish your ideas and a large search engine like Google won't include your site in its indexing? You're pretty much guaranteed a very limited audience at that point. Now, let's say you have about 140,000 highly visited pages that Google has been driving traffic to for years, but suddenly pulls the plug. This happened last week, and Gizmodo.com reports the website Natural News had roughly 140,000 of its pages delisted from Google. Now the site's owner, Mike the Health Ranger Adams, is crying foul. He claims that companies like Google are anti-Trump globalists who are waging a war against speakers of truth like Milo Yiannopoulos and InfoWars. And they continue, quoting Mike Adams, "You are witnessing a modern-day book burning by the internet Gestapo that now decides what knowledge you're never allowed to access." Adams wrote this in a lengthy blog yesterday, especially because much of that knowledge can help set humanity free. Further into the article, officially, Google won't say why the site was delisted from search results, but the company does confirm that it happened. We don't comment on individual sites, but if we find that a site violates one or more of these guidelines, we may take manual action against it, a Google spokesperson told Gizmodo. Once a site has remedied the problem, the webmaster can submit the site for reconsideration. At this point, let me mention that Gizmodo is no fan of Natural News or Mike Adams. They claim he spreads misinformation. And Gizmodo suggests that instead of nefarious reasons, the site may have violated Google's terms of search. They write, one glaring violation: the mobile version of the site performs redirects prohibited by Google's terms of service. As I flip the next page. That's a big no-no for Google, and one that you may have encountered on sketchy websites before. When you click on a link, you're supposed to go to the website you're expecting, not redirected to someplace else. If that's the case, then Natural News just needs to make some changes and resubmit their site to be reindexed by Google. However, as of Monday morning, naturalnews.com still wasn't being found in our Google searches, but his backup site, natural.news, was found. Which brings up an interesting point. Who does get to decide what you and I see online in our internet searches? Or in our Facebook news feeds for that matter? Is it just a point of ownership in the free market? As in, if you don't like what Facebook or Google does, then hey, create your own. And if you cannot play by their rules, then accept responsibility by suffering the consequences until you're ready to play within those rules? Perhaps. But if this is not the case and it's more of a way to silence dissenters, then shouldn't we all be concerned? After news of this broke, sites on the opposite side of the issues as Natural News were giddy that such a large force could be taken down. Should they be? Could this be a precursor to what internet neutrality might bring? After all, if free speech is to be regulated, then by whose definitions and guidelines are we to abide? With all this discussion about fake news, is a fake situation being set up just so Congress can have an excuse to move ahead with legislation to usurp more liberty from Americans? Now, let's place this in a different context. Let's move this over to a new topic. From a headline that CNN put out last week. Is Donald Trump a conservative? We ask the CPAC faithful. Further into the article, it says, attendees and organizers here have struggled at times to define where Trump fits into the conservative firmament. The American Conservative Union, formed in 1964 as a gatekeeper and bulwark against extremist groups like the John Birch Society, has struggled at times to define its relationship with the unsavory elements of Trump's supports, like members of the white nationalist and anti-Semitic alt-right. First of all, carrying through our discussion of gatekeeping, Who is it that gets to answer in the definitive if Donald Trump is a conservative? Or better yet, how is a conservative defined? Do we follow the examples of Reagan conservatism, George H.W. Bush conservatism, or George W. Bush conservatism? For if so, we merely need to look at the fruit of their labors to see that by and large, globalism was led in to help drive this country further away from its founding principles of limited government, individual liberty, and sovereignty. The federal government grew in scope and capacity, supplanting American liberty along the way. For more on this, we suggest watching our videos on neo-conservatism. Links are in the video description. So, is that a reason to call the John Birch Society an extremist group or fringe? Our policy of denying memberships to anti-Semites and racists has been a long-standing policy, as is our policy of kicking them out if such attitudes take hold within existing members. Is that extreme too? Or how about our view that government is to be limited under the Constitution? Does that make us anti-government? We understand that enemies of the Constitution are on both sides of the political aisle, and we regularly expose their plans. For we know that the battle is defined as liberty versus tyranny and not Democrats versus Republicans. To think otherwise is to ignore the real problem, which only introduces false solutions. Now, shifting gears for a minute, we find some good news coming from the New American Magazine. In the headline, "Bill to Eliminate Environmental Protection Agency Introduced in Congress." It appears that Congressman Matt Gates from Florida is following in the legislative linguistic footsteps of Representative Thomas Massie by drafting a one-sentence bill. It states, "The Environmental Protection Agency shall terminate on December 31st, 2018. Further in the article it says, Gates further explained that his bill wouldn't affect the 1963 Clean Air Act or the 1972 Clean Water Act. Instead, such responsibilities would return to the states and local communities to address. He added, local communities tend to be able to react a lot quicker. And as they write in here, Congressman Gates' bill is a good first step in restoring federalism, returning to the states and the people those powers not delegated to the federal government in accordance to the 10th Amendment of the Constitution with respect to the environment. The Constitution does not grant the federal government any power to make environmental legislation or policies." Now this is an example of what conservatives in Congress ought to be doing and what all conservatives should be advocating: adherence to the Constitution. If you're interested in joining the battle to push for constitutional adherence, then it may be time to join the John Birch Society. Go to jbs.org for more information. And be sure to like and share this video with family and friends. Sign up for our e-newsletters and subscribe to our social media channels. Until next week, we'll see you then.